My name is Rajiv Nema. I've been part of Natak for a long time. We haven't done a session like this ever in the 15-year history of Natak. This is our 35th production. This play I was doing the publicity for, and as we were part of our publicity, as in 21st century you have to create a Facebook account and Twitter account and blog. So I said, okay, we should share stories on the blog, and whoever can write. So Ravi Chopra ji, whom you saw in the role of Maulana, he wrote his story. And as soon as I read his story, I said, these stories have to be told and heard by lots and lots of people. Partition of India, I believe, as after this play I've thought about it more, read about it more, researched it more, I believe is one of the most traumatic event in the history of not only in the Indian subcontinent but the history of at least modern mankind. More than 12 to 15 million people had to migrate, had to leave their homes and find new homes, just like we saw in the play. There are accounts anywhere between 500,000 to 1.5 million lost their lives. The unfortunate truth is not much is taught or told about that in India. Forget about the Western world. So me, someone who brought in late 60s and early 70s, we never learnt about partition to the extent the Western kids learn about Holocaust and all other events, which we all should learn from. So part of all that was we should do this. And in that effort, another thing happened. There is a second generation Indians and some first generation Berkeley students. We have Gunita Bhalla, who is here, if you can raise your hand. There is a group they formed called 1947 Partition Archive. There is information about them in the brochure. But at the same time, while I was thinking about this, let's do this panel, we found this group who about a year back had this similar conclusion in their mind that this history, even though it is dark history, it is slowly going away. A lot of people are no longer between us or among us. So they started seeking out people all around the world. So now they have more than 100 volunteers. They have, just in Bay Area, Gunita and her group have interviewed in last 1 year 83 people. And then some people from that group are with us. Last week we talked to some people. Today we are talking to two of the gentlemen. We will be talking to some more next week. So let's start. Let's hear their stories. Ravi ji is a retired Major General from Indian Army. Professor Om Juneja is a retired English professor from Baroda. Ravi ji, tell us your story, how old you were and what was your experience?
Yes, thank you, Rajiv. To start with, let me tell you these were very, very sad moments and the darkest hours in the history of India, perhaps as I see them and as I experienced them. I was just 8 years plus, and it all started in a small village known as Kasowal. That is the place where we were at the time of partition. My father was in charge police station, and a month before the independence, that is somewhere in July 1947, he got promotion and got posted to Lalpur, and he had to go. But we all knew that something is brewing, something is going to happen. There were a lot of rumors. But there was also an apprehension that after 15th August 47, things will cool down. That was the general impression which was gathering momentum, that things will cool down. So since we were in the school and the final exams were over and we had to go to the next class, so father said, okay, I'll come back after taking my new charge and then I'll send you to India. My mother, my younger brothers and younger sister, they had already left. So I, with my another younger brother and my dadi, we stayed back and we were put under the care of one Hindu family, business person, Tikam Chand, and hoping that everything will go well. But as soon as after the independence, a well-wisher of Tikam Chand, he came and informed him that today is the last night for you if you don't get out, because they are going to burn your house. So he said, we will not take a chance. So his family, with all the cash and jewelry which they could collect, with all valuables which they could collect, we went to the railway station and spent the night there. Early morning, being a village, there was no fast trains or super fast trains stopping at the station. Only passenger train we could catch, and we were to go to Firozpur, and for that we had to get the train changed at Raiwind Junction. So we caught the passenger train. Somehow we reached early morning Raiwind Junction, and then there were a lot of problems. Suddenly there was a kind of a riot. People started running, and there was no place in the trains which were going to India. People were sitting on the roof, everywhere. We couldn't get in. And then I don't know who started firing, whether the police or the people among themselves. And in that process, I also got a bullet passed through my calf of the left leg. And I started bleeding. My grandmother didn't know what to do. My younger brother was having a fever. And there was no medicines, no first aid. So all she could do, tear off her dhoti, part of it, and there was no Dettol or something, so she had to soak it with the urine and put a bandage, wash it, put a bandage and whatever I remember, but still the blood was still oozing, and I was having a lot of problems, crying. To cut the story short, it was just terrible experience at the railway station. Somehow, as luck would have it, a Muslim family was to go to Kasur, and we were to go to next station, Firozpur. That is where the Indian border, Kasur and Firozpur are the borders. So that gentleman, I will call him a gentleman because he was like a Maulana of this play. He took pity on us and he said, okay, I will take care of you, and I've got a reservation, everything. And that Tikam Chand, he said, whatever you want. He paid him cash, ornaments, this is all yours. You just please make sure that we somehow reach Firozpur. So we got into the next train when it came, and he had the reservation, he had the everything set, and we sat as part of his family. Now the story doesn't end here, it starts. When the trains left station to station on the railway side, we could see the houses burning. We saw that young girls, ladies, women jumping into the well to save their honor. You just imagine what kind of that scenario would be, that people are willingly giving their life to save themselves of further brutalities. So they jumping, killing on the platform. When the train runs, you normally see the stones running with you, but you could see only the bodies, some headless bodies, some arms, blood. That is what we witnessed all through. To cut the story short, we somehow reached Kasur thanks to that Muslim gentleman who would tell the invaders, no, these are my children. In fact, he also had his own children also, his wife. He said, this is my family, my children. And when the station platform will come, we will hide in the bathroom, go into the seat so that people can't see us. So he would only say, it's my family, my family. And every time he saved us, we kept on paying him. So when we reached Kasur, he had to get down. And there was a lot of commotion even at the Kasur railway station. So Tikam Chand put his thing on his feet. He said, please, when the train starts, leaves the platform, you come with us. And he said, but my family. Said, okay, you leave your family, but you be on the door. Don't let us alone, otherwise all your hard work will go waste. So that, God bless his soul, he did it. He ultimately got out of the running train at the end of the platform, and that is how the next station was Firozpur. And when we reached Firozpur, we had a lot of Sardars, Sikh gentlemen, with medicines, doctors, fruits, milk, ladies, they're all attending. And they all suddenly came to our compartment and took care of us. And when we got out of the platform, believe you me, the other compartments were massacred. Some hands were hanging. I saw hands, heads, blood on the compartments. So all said and done, it was a terrible moment. And the silver lining was that here we reached in Firozpur and we were looked after well by the people. But en route, the Muslims will come. है कोई सरदार दा बच्चा, है कोई सरदार दा बच्चा, है कोई सरदार दा पुत्र. Because they were after Sardars, because the rumor was, rightly or wrongly, that it was the Sardars who were killing the Muslim people in the trains when the trains were coming to Pakistan. So is that to and fro process was very, very pathetic. It was a human degradation at its worst, I can tell you that. So that kind of, that is another phase of humanity. So ultimately we reached Delhi and we sent to the camp. Camp was at Krolbagh. So that camp life is a different story by itself, how we managed that. So, and the God was great that He saved me, my brother, my dadi, and perhaps saved me to serve the nation. And ultimately, I went on to serve the nation and retired as a Major General. Thank you.
Incredible stories, and we would have never thought to that level. Thank you for sharing with us. I know it is very, very painful for you to share with us. Professor Juneja, we would like to hear what your experience was during that transition time.
First of all, I must thank all of you to give me this opportunity to share my experience with you. The reason is, I have lived all my life in India. It's very recently that I have migrated because my sons are here in California. And the reason that I am telling you is that for last many years I have been trying to tell these stories to people in India. They don't listen. There is some kind of, I don't know what kind of feeling it is, I can't describe. I mean, you try to organize a meeting where you say, well, at least, there is this generation which is departing. These stories will no more be there. Somehow there is some kind of guilt feeling, or I don't know what feeling is there, they don't. For the first time I was interviewed after on the 50th anniversary of India's independence by Times of India. The local correspondent in Baroda approached me when we were celebrating the 50th of anniversary, and he said, can you talk about partition? I said, well, of course, because I was 6.5, 7 years, and all my life I have suffered even after partition. And I would like to talk. And that was the only time we talked. After that, nobody ever came to talk about it. So this is one, that's why I must thank you. And it's really surprising that India is doing this kind of archival work. And it is University of California, Berkeley, trying to do it. I don't know whether because it is because of the distancing of the most terrible experience that people do not want to talk about it. Well, the partition story as is not very different except in details. That we were living in a small village, mid-Ranja. If you have heard the story of Ranja and Heer, so the same village where Ranja belonged to. And my grandfather was dead by that time. My father had education and he was reading the newspaper. He was trying to tell everyone that, this partition is going to take place, so why don't you do something about and move. But it was my grandmother who ruled the family Family means 4 brothers, out of which 3 of them were married with children and all that, something like 21 people in the family. And she would simply not listen to anyone. She could not believe that this thing could ever happen. So what she did, when this became very clear that partition is going to take place and we have to leave it, she refused to leave. My grandfather was owner of something like 6 or 7 villages, rich family, but only land. No, cash or whatever. So what she did was that she collected all the jewelry that she had from the family members and cash, put it in an earthen pot, got it fixed in a wall, that she was going to come back to collect it. My father went on telling this was wrong. Anyway, he managed to get some money, and my father and his elder brother, both of them came by train as a kind of advance party. They left the village to come to Delhi, and we were left there in the village itself. My grandmother would simply not leave the place. It was only when the person who operated the only lorry service, that is the bus service between my village and Sargodha, he had taken some money from my grandfather for buying the bus. So he came specially. He said, "This is the last time that I am going to request you. If you want to come, come." So he loaded all of us, all the 21, 22 persons in his last bus. And the minute we left that, within half an hour, within few minutes, we saw our house was put on fire. That I could see from my own eyes also. So we came to a refugee camp in Sargodha, in what was known as Company Bagh, a kind of garden which was established by East India Company. So there were refugee camps. Now in that camp we stayed for almost 3 months. No father, because father and uncle had left. They had already gone to India to do something about us. And this was a terrible place, that refugee camp. My younger brother was born there, and he was named Camp Raj, one who is born the king of the camp, or whatever you call it. After about almost 2.5 months or 3 months, and it was those terrible months of monsoons, I remember all those scenes very vividly, that how it would rain and we were asked not to get out because we would be killed. After almost 2.5 months, then a military convoy came. Something like 4 trucks came to take everybody in that camp, and I don't know how many people were there, but as I can recollect, there may be something like 400 or 500 families there. So they came there to collect us, and we were put into the trucks, those army trucks, like herds. And then the convoy started moving. And there were 2 soldiers in front, 1 at the back. That's how this would move. And both the places, both the sides were actually ambushed. And we were told, children were told, not to move out at all of this truck. Obviously, we were hungry, we were thirsty. At one place, the truck stopped. There was water, flowing water, and 2 children, my elder brother and one more boy. My elder brother should have been 8 years, and the elder boy was 10. They just jumped out of that truck. Only their dead bodies came back after about 4 or 5 hours. This is how the truck would move. Every day, maybe about 7-8 miles or something like that, from Sargodha to Amritsar. That was the target. So this is how we moved from one place to another place to another place. And the interesting part of this is what I discovered after 30 years. That this person who was actually heading the army trucks convoy, he was a young captain, Captain Bakshi. His father was police superintendent of Sargodha. And the father had said, don't go with this particular convoy because you may not come back. And being a young boy, very young, he said, no, I have to save these people. Otherwise, that's why it was 3 months that took, because the army was also not coming this side to take people. And he was the one who would stop, would command and take the convoy ahead. As accident would have, accidentally, I meet this captain exactly almost after 35 years in Baroda. That is because my wife, she's sitting here, she's also from partition. When she taught in a school, and the vice principal of the school was one Bakshi. So we were talking, exchanging our notes, and he said, yes, you are talking about some, all that I remembered was there was one Captain Bakshi. So he says, could it be my brother? I said, how can it be? Because by this time this man had retired, he was not exactly Major General, he retired from Brigadier's position. After 35 years we meet and check notes, and we find that he is the man who really saved us.
Professor Saab, I want to hear the story of how you met your father.
Okay. So this is one part, and the other part is, the father and his uncle, his brother, they reached Delhi. We lost complete touch with them. Slowly we moved on from that because that convoy left us there. And as he rightly said, there were those trains on the river, and people were, I still remember how the river was full of dead bodies, and it was red. These are memories which really stick to me. Now, we lost complete touch with our father. So this was 21 people plus a few more, something like 50 or 60 people who were coming in one truck. There were 2 trucks. So practically half the village was there in these in this kind of. So we reached Amritsar in that particular refugee camp. From Amritsar to Ambala refugee camp. Finally, we went to live in this Gurgaon refugee camp, and we had absolutely no contact with our father and uncle. Now, every evening, I think you would remember, sir, that every evening All India Radio used to announce names of people lost and found. One day, and there were no radios, but in the refugee camp they had put huge loudspeakers. So on the loudspeaker, his name was announced. My father's name was announced. Then everybody started finding out where he was and what it is. And similarly, we got our messages that we are in this particular camp. And finally we discovered that he was working, both of them had been working as coolies at Old Delhi railway station. And when they were working there, 2 boys meet them. They were going to Pakistan. And these 2 boys came to them and they said, do you recognize us? He said, no. And this boy said, I am from Midrangha. He said, whose son you are? So he gave the name of the father. And they connected because the father and the entire family was Muzera. Muzera is, the land tiller. Generally, Hindus own the land and Muslims were tillers, landless tillers. So these were sons of those Muzeras. They had come many years ago to Agra. And they were running the business of selling chrome leather, you know, the leather of the cow. We call it technically chrome leather. And they said, okay, why don't you come with us? We take you to Agra and you buy our business. So these two persons, that is my father and uncle, they collected whatever small little money from wherever, because by this time they had met us in Gurgaon. And whatever they collected, and they went to Agra and they bought the business. They were the first Hindus to sell leather in Agra. Today, there are more than 1,000 Hindu families in this business. It's a huge business. And so this is how they bought that business, starting selling those leather. And then, of course, you know, one of my younger uncles, he was more adventurous. He went to Calcutta to start business again. Yes, please.
Either of you have any stories similar to Ratan Kima? Sounds like your dadi was one of that, just holding on till the last moment. Someone you know who stayed back in Pakistan? Some
Yes, I
Hindu
have.
person,
I
and
too have, yes.
So both of you sound like a story each.
Well, you know, as I said that my grandfather owned something like 5-6 villages, and we had a lot of servants. One of the servants actually stayed back. His name was Bhola. He never married. He stayed back, saying that he would not leave Haveli in which we lived. And later on we learned that he converted to Islam. We never met, except that one of the persons of our village went back after about, I think, 15 years and came to know that he was killed. Though he converted to Islam, still whatever happened, I don't know the story, but he stayed back because he said, I am not going to leave this Haveli at all, whatever may happen.
So this play is, as the playwright claims, it is a fiction, but what I see is it probably evolved from a lot of real stories.
It is a real story. I mean, I couldn't believe that it was fiction. Honestly speaking, from my experience and the stories that I heard, because it is the entire village that migrated later on, as I said. We went and settled in an evacuee property in Agra, Khoja Ki Haveli. That is a place which Khojas had vacated. Khojas are, you know, a Muslim community, they had left, and the place was not going to be given to us at all. That also has a very interesting story. The day Sardar Patel died, all these refugees living in Agra, they decided, because they were not being allotted the property, so they decided, okay, we'll go and occupy the place physically. And what happened there was that they made a rule that all males, including me, I should have been by that time 8 years of age, because it's about 2 years gap, 2.5 years gap, you know.
2 years after partition.
2 years after
you
partition,
arrive
okay.
in India.
After I arrived. Till 2 years, we were not at all settled. From one camp to another camp to another camp to another camp. And the government was not allotting any property, though the property was there. So we decided, it must have been something like 100 or 150 people, they decided that tonight we'll go and occupy Khoja Ki Haveli. So they took weapons, whatever they could get hold of, you know, a lathi or bhala or whatever. And I think it was mid of the night when we physically attacked that place. And the rule there was that anybody who can sleep in that house for the night, that house will belong to that family. So we were 2 children, me and my uncle, we were put in one particular house. And when we went there, it was pitch dark, then we heard that somebody was, you know, there was some sound, murmuring and all that. So we got mortally afraid, and we left the place. And then we saw that this person was actually, he jumped from the first floor of the house down in the street, and he was running ahead of us. We ran after him. After that, the beating that I got, I can never forget. Because I never knew, as child, 8 to 7 years, 8 years child, he would not know that you are losing property. We lost property. And this became the property. The house that was occupied by my other uncle, 300 square feet, 18 of us stayed in that house for exactly 15 years. That's where we were brought up. We had absolutely nothing, and this was the only place that, otherwise they had an intention, okay, that there are these two boys, uncle 3, so 3 of us would occupy at least 2 or 3 places. But all that we could get was this 300, square feet place, and where we spent most of our life. So,
You were going to share a story?
Yeah, not as long story as a short one. Just let me admit, to start with, that I had 2 grandmothers. One I've already narrated, she was with us, and my elder grandmother was in our native place, Wazirabad, very close to Gujranwala. Between Lahore and Gujranwala, there's a place, Wazirabad. We were Diwans of Wazirabad. We had that title given by the British as Diwans. Even today, till my father, he was Diwan. I left that title now, because my title was Major General Chopra and not Diwan. So that grandmother, she was very bold, very brave lady, and full of stamina, full of authoritative attitude, and she would not budge. She had a faithful servant, Allah Rakha, and he looked after her even after partition. We all came to India, as I narrated. My father was in Lalpur. From Lalpur he came down to India. He flew from Lalpur. My mother and my two brother and sister, they are already gone, as I mentioned. But my elder grandmother, she stayed on. He said, I am not going to leave my Haveli, as Haveli described, perhaps a little better than this, big Haveli. We had Diwan Khana, Sheesh Mahal, blah, 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 all sorts of things. So she said, like she would say, ma'am, I'm born here and I'm going to die here. I'm not going to leave. And then the military came, and ultimately military literally pushed her out. He said, no, you have to stay in the camp. Nobody can stay here. So we cannot take care of you, and we don't want your death to be on our head. You come to the camp. So she was literally taken to camp, but she was again brave. She remembered that she has left that much jewelry in the wall. Like he said, our people used to put the jewelry, there was no lockers or something, used to put it in the wall. So she bribed the local camp wala police. He said, can you take me to my house, because I've left my locket there, and it's my very valuable locket. And if I want to carry, that's the only valuable thing. So she herself went inside, locked the door, dug the thing out. She knew exactly where it was, dug the thing out, put the potli, and where she all tied, so that it is under the cloth, and she tied it there, and she brought it to the camp. Ultimately, she was so brave that when the camp people came to Delhi, I don't know how we managed, because that is where we located at Amritsar camp. She brought all that jewelry with her and intact. And that jewelry became so handy that what we lost, at least that jewelry was very helpful for our future survival. Because my father, he was in the police didn't have much of a salary, and we had lost all that property. So that jewelry became very handy. So this is a similar story, but with a little difference.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing the story. So here with us we have a retired professor who is just introducing to me live, and he would like to share his.
I just want to give my love and honor to the future I am in my 70s. I came here 40 years ago, but I am from Amritsar. My family was in Karachi. My family was in Karachi at that time. We were businessmen. And lots of trains passing by Amritsar. People were butchered, just like the trains in Pakistan side. We shouldn't think about it that Hindus are wrong or Muslims are wrong. We have to look at what is going on now. And I want all human beings, whatever religion you believe or be like me, a non-believer, world is in a lot of trouble. And I think it is only through love with everybody, not thinking about that I'm Muslim or I'm Hindu, I'm from Pakistan, I'm from India. And believe me, I read 6 Pakistani papers every day on internet. And there is movement going on, actually, more so in Pakistan. I don't know about India. In Punjab or Pakistan, they said that let's stop this boundary. Let's interact with each other. In fact, there is a paper called News, which is produced, Jung owns it, and then Friday Times and Daily Times and Dawn and so on. But Jung itself has started Aman Ki Asha. Aman word is from Urdu, Asha is for Sanskrit. I think we here in this community, there are so many people, Iranian, Afghans, from the subcontinent and the neighbor areas. And we interact with each other, so lovely. And I think people like me, I like to come and talk and meet. I'm a member of ICC, and I hate when I don't see much Muslim names in that. We have to take care of everyone. Otherwise, for our younger people, what is going on in Africa, in Egypt and all the commentators, they don't talk about why they are like this. Early 20th century, I think, if we read, we'll find out that America, which we are citizens, contributed to that a lot along with Churchill and so on. So I hope we cooperate, and I will love to work with you. I'm looking for something like this, and I'm very fortunate to have come today to meet all of you.